if anything, my idea would be to play c3, d4, and try to control the center in this fashion, so that I can play knight c3, then bishop e3 or bishop f4, rook e1, rook c1, and I have a pretty decent position. Generally, I have a decent control of the center, but nonetheless, you have to be really careful with moves like e5, which are characteristic of King's Indian's attacks. You know, when you have your knight on d2, often the rook on e1, knight f1, h4, knight h2 could be another idea. I don't know if you have seen those kind of games. Are pretty much what Fischer used to play against the French, and if you do not play d5, that's even better in these kind of positions, so that you can throw an attack with g4, sometimes g5, and you go and kill the guy. It's another plan that I could have. So those are like the general ideas that I have, and if anything, if I were you, I'd be trying to think, well, maybe just castle, probably d6, e5, and then f5, instead of just keeping the pawn on e6. And the idea behind that is that as you have moved your knight to e7, something that I have seen in these kind of situations is that you can get into a more or less King's Indian position as well, and play with f5 in the future, which gives you pretty decent chances in these kind of situations. So I will encourage you to think also of these kind of plans with d6, e5, because also the other problem that you have is the bishop on c8, right? It's like horrible. It's like this bishop is one of the problems of playing these kind of situations, and I know that because I do play these kind of situations against like c4. I play symmetrical, you know, like with c5 against c4 in the first move, and this is pretty much the structure that I get, and often this bishop is really bad. So what I try to do when I do play that kind of positions is I play d6, e5, and f5, you know, so that I get a little bit more of activity. And of course, often something interesting is to play h6, king h7 when our king is already castled, because that's gonna give us a little bit more of protection, of safety in this kind of situations. Hope that makes sense.
Yes, I'm listening. I'm learning something about pawn structures too.
So yeah, this is something interesting as well. With this h6, the king on g8 goes to h7, and your king is really protected, and then you're out of this diagonal, which is really annoying. So that's something interesting when you play with these plans of f5. But see how f5 generally has to be working with e5, you know? Because if not, you're allowing me to play e5, and that's tremendously annoying. So
you have to get out. You have to get outside. You have to get the king to castle. But then Fischer used to play f5 a lot. That was kind of like King's Indian type position.
Exactly. But generally, I like to do that with my pawn on e5, even though it's restricting the mobility of my bishop on g7, which is annoying. But nonetheless, what I am doing is that I am fighting for the center without giving you the options of playing e5, for example, which is terribly annoying when you play f5, because then the square d6 is horrible, and that's generally really annoying, you know? So that's something that I try to do in these kind of situations, and to move my pawn to e5 and to d6, and then f5. You know, so that could be an idea here. Also, I do believe that here you're still playing too quickly, you know, like you haven't realized what's your plan, and you're playing really fast without knowing it. Like here, for example, if you start to generate the plan, maybe it will take you a minute or two, or maybe a little bit less than that, but you already know what you want to do with your position without just moving your pieces due to developmental situations, right? Another interesting move could be the idea of playing knight d4 and knight c6, but that's something that happens in the English games with a symmetric variation, and the problem is that here I haven't moved my pawn to c4. That means that I still have c3 to control the square d4, so that's kind of annoying as well. And castle, I think castle makes a lot of sense. Nonetheless, if you say castle here after you have generated a plan, it's way better, you know. If you play just castle because, then you just castle. But if you castle and you already have your idea in mind, you are not improvising anymore and you have a plan, right? So c3, just a normal move. The idea with c3 is that I want to play d4, is one of the plans that I just told you. If you take, then I take, and I have a really decent center. It's not the end of the world, because I have played this as well, but it gives me a little bit of space, and that's really nice. For example, let's imagine a silly move, like for example a6. I generally play d4, c takes, pawn takes, and something that I have seen in this kind of positions is that people play d5, and generally I play e5. So what happens here is that I do have certain control of the center. I would say that the position is more or less equal, maybe a little bit of advantage for the white pieces, but it's still quite playable for the black pieces. The problem is the bishop on c8, which I don't like that much, but I guess you have to try to figure out a way to get it out, right? And f6 is another idea, of course, when you have this chain of pawns. Generally, you want to break it on the top or on the bottom, right? So
Yeah.
c3, just a normal move, and queen b6. Well, this queen b6, I guess that makes sense, but I think that you have to be too careful with this e5 coming in certain positions. Maybe simply d6 now is a move that I will play, and then I'll try to play e5. Or I am just thinking that maybe d5 directly seems like another option. Yeah, that's pretty much what you can play in this position. d6, d5. I think you cannot wait so much for the center. And queen b6, the problem is that you are not solving the problem, which is a bishop on c8, right? If you play d5, then at least you are somewhat giving some space to the bishop. But if not, then the queen is also stopping you from playing moves like b6, which could be another way to try to develop the bishop, right? Like bishop b7, generate pressure here in the diagonal. Kind of makes sense. But with the queen on b6, you're stopping yourself from doing that. So queen b6. Also, of course, my knight on d2 is threatening to go to c4, which is something really common in these kind of positions as well. Exactly. And that's really annoying, right? So knight bd2. And here, one more time, you're kind of playing too fast, and you play simply rook e8. But the problem is that knight c4 is just too strong. I kind of didn't...
Yeah, that's...
Yeah, I didn't...
I was in shock when I saw that. I took a long time calculating this, and
exactly.
It's just this is bad for black.
Exactly, and it's too late, because you have to kind of predict it here. You have to say, well, knight c4 is coming. Maybe d5 to stop it could be a really decent idea, or I don't know, something else. But if you allow me to play knight c4, then this is just too strong. And I believe here, in this position, it is, it's really tricky, because generally it looks like the white pieces are doing nothing, but when they do, they finally do something in the position, then they actually get really active situations. So that's, yeah. I
just simply miss this. It's too strong. Because of the queen being here, if I don't know, this gives you this open file here. What should I have played here rather than this?
I think that what I would play in this position is just the same thing that I told you a couple of months ago. Maybe d6, e5, if I have the opportunity. Because, of course, if you play d6, then things are not collapsing right away, because let's say that d6, knight c4, queen c7, I can picture that if bishop f4, then this move is just stopping me, right? And
right.
If I play, I don't know, maybe bishop e3, and then the plan that I told you before can just happen,
Yes.
h6, king h7, f5, and then this is really dangerous even for me now in the position, because I don't have a really clear plan to proceed. Now I have to figure out how to go about the position, maybe try to play with d4. This kind of positions also when you play the King's Indian attack, and when the black pieces play c5 and e5, something that you try to place b4 so that you can get rid of the central pawns, Might be one of the plans that I could have elaborated. I don't know. I didn't think about this position in a specific, but it could have been probably what I would try to play in this position, b4, to try to get rid of the central pawns and then try to generate counterplay there. Because the bishop is generating some pressure on c5. Also, maybe the rook can go to b1, or maybe I can play, I don't know, maybe queen d2, rook d1 as another idea. Hope that makes sense. But I do believe that this is what I would play, just because I do play this against c4, and it's more or less what I play. So, knight bd2, rook e8, and this is the problem with playing too fast during the opening, is that this is just a natural move, right? Rook e8. But nonetheless, even if I didn't have knight c4, I think rook e8 is, I don't know, it doesn't seem so nice, because I don't quite see what you're doing right now. For example, you said that if you play d5 here in this position, here, right? You said that if you play d5, pawn takes, you're kind of opening the file. But I believe that at the same time, maybe you're giving yourself some room to go to f5, which is something that's coming to my mind right now.
Right.
Which could be annoying, right? And also the bishop is free to go, so that's like the good side of it. And nonetheless, I believe that it is quite solid, and I have to finish my development, so it is not so easy for me here. I don't believe that I will have a lot of advantage, if any, here. So in this position, c3, queen b6, knight d2, rook e8, and this rook e8 is just catastrophic, and even though it's natural, right? So queen c7, and now e5, and this is just really annoying, because now your bishop is on c8. doesn't have anything to do, your queen on c7 doesn't have anything to do, your bishop on g7 exactly doesn't have anything to do, your knights are kind of misplaced, there are threats of knight d6, and wow, it's just too much pressure. Also, something interesting is that this is something that happens in King's Indians attacks like a lot. When you play e5, you move your bishop to f4 when the queen is on c7, and that generates a lot of x-rays, you know, and that could be really dangerous. And you can even see some games of Fischer playing these kind of situations with bishop f4, generating pressure on the queen on c7, and that's why when you play generally with d5 and the white pieces play e5, the queen on c7 can be a target sometimes when you have a pawn on e5, which can be mobile after you have some breakthroughs in the position. So that's something interesting as well. So f6, and here in this position I don't quite know what to do with the black pieces. I guess the move that I was thinking was kind of b6, which seemed like the logical move to try to play bishop b7. Of course you cannot play b5 for what you just said, that knight d6 was coming and knight takes b5 is just terribly annoying as well. But I believe the problem is simply starting here and you're paying the consequences now. And
yes,
it's just too strong now. b6 is probably the way I would play this position. I don't know, and the reason why is because, well, I have to finish my development somehow. Even if I cannot play d5, I have to try to figure out a way, and maybe even afterwards a6 and then b5, so that when the knight goes to d6 I am not losing the pawn on b5 and I can play knight f5. But I don't know, I'm just throwing some moves. It might not work. So in this position f6, but I don't like f6. I kind of don't like any move. You know, it's weird because I kind of don't like any move here because the central situation is so strong, and d4 might come at any given point, and that could be terribly annoying. So, and the pawn on e5 will be consolidated if I play d4. For example, how do you get rid of the pawn on e5? So, in this position, I guess I would play b6. But I don't quite see a lot to do with the black pieces, and it's not so obvious how to exploit the position either with the white pieces after b6, I guess, because b6, I guess I would play something like d4 or maybe even bishop f4 are like my two candidate moves here for what I just told you of the plans of stopping you from playing any of this kind of moves, so that I can keep you with the x-rays here on c7 just being attack. And after f6, I guess d4 is just really strong as well, because I'm stopping you from recovering the central situation. Pawn takes, and I calculated here that probably knight takes d5 was the way to go, you know? Knight takes, pawn takes, and I thought this was the way to proceed here. And I didn't like the position, but I thought it wasn't so bad, because at least you still have the chances of playing b6 or just moving your knight to c6. So I thought that knight takes c5 was the way to go, and I didn't think here you were saying that after knight takes c5, for example, bishop f4 could happen, but I don't know, knight takes f3 with check, right? So the knight on c4 was falling, and that just simply doesn't work. So that's something that you calculated and you just discarded due to the fact that it seemed horrible. You didn't go deeper into this one, but I believe that this was probably the move to play in this position. I was kind of afraid of that, if you could just recover your position, but as you discarded it and you were thinking that maybe knight takes e4, then you said that, well, knight takes e4 doesn't work because I have queen takes e4, right? So doesn't seem to be likely. And in this position, of course, knight d6 is always a possibility, right? So you played rook f8, and
this not, yeah, you're saying this might have worked.
That's what I calculated, like knight takes, pawn takes. I didn't want to take here with my knight. I thought that taking with my knight was a little bit just getting an isolated queen's pawn and giving you the chance to play something else. I thought that taking with a pawn was just simply gonna take the chances of you playing d6. Right. So I thought that this was the position.
Like, yeah, I see. That looks good.
Yeah.
Somehow I missed that. I think I mentioned it, but just dismissed it without calculating.
Exactly, and I do believe that that's a part of the, you know, the instinct that we have as chess players. Sometimes we think that a move is not necessarily the best, but in these kind of situations, something that I will recommend you is just and this is something that I just told the guy before you and before this game. He was saying to every single move that he played, I like this move, I don't like this move, I'm gonna play the move that I like, right? And I told him, alright, if you're gonna play the move that you like, something that you have to try to do is give logical reasons for why you like the move. And give logical reasons for why you do not like the other move, right? And see if logic sustains or logic supports your instinct, and if that's the case, that's really good. Just go with your instinct, right? Like if logic supports your I like this, that's really cool. Go for it. But if logic doesn't do that, then just don't simply do that. It's just ignoring a really big part of the game. So for example, here I think that probably happened to you because probably you said, oh, I don't like this knight takes c5, and at the beginning you gave a thought to that because of course it's a move to c. But after you just saw the move, you said, oh, no, I don't like the move anymore. You kind of went like, all right, it's not going to work. And here you just didn't see the logic behind it and the support behind it, which is basically that you are simplifying and you have basically a disadvantage when it comes to space. And generally, when we do not have a lot of space, we want to trade some pieces so that we can decrease the pressure, right? So here also you are giving yourself the option of playing knight f5, knight d5, knight c6, b6, bishop b7, rook c8, for example, and I believe that's playable. And it might not be the best position ever, but it seems like recovery after all the things that happened.
Yeah.
So
I would take that position over any of the other positions
exactly
that I ended up getting.
Exactly. For example, here you played rook f8, bishop f4, because I thought actually this one I kind of did it out of instinct, just because I've seen these bishops f4 a lot of the time in these kind of situations. I just calculated a little bit about it, and I thought it was simply a decent move. And here you played f5, but I don't think f5 is, I don't know, I don't like f5. Like,
well, there's no good moves.
Yeah,
here. I didn't like it either. Remember?
Yeah, no, nobody likes this move.
What else?
Yeah, it's just horrible. Here I just made some notes and I wrote. Wait a second. In the move 15, you said that you were considering moves like knight a5. Here after f5, knight e3. In this position, you were considering moves. Wait, here. You were considering moves like knight a5 to try to get rid of the knight, but I don't think that's going to work, of course. That seemed like a little bit desperate and didn't seem like it was really good. You were thinking of f5 like many times ago, many moves ago. And in this position, remember what I told you of d6, e5 and having a pawn on e5? Then this is the consequence of not having a pawn on e5. So here you say also, I want to play d5, I want to attack. I think you want to finish your... and I wrote that. And on the other line, I think instead of attacking, what you want to do is to finish your development, you know? Here you're like, I want to attack, I want to move my pieces to squares where they are threatening something. But I believe that what you really want to do is to finish your development. I think that maybe a way to go here is just to try to finish, and instead of just trying to figure out how to attack, because I don't believe there are many attacks, I believe that you should try to figure out a way to get this bishop out somehow. And I don't know how to do that exactly in this position. Maybe move like... I don't know, you have to figure out that. Maybe... yeah, I guess f5 is just kind of forced. If anything, knight takes c5 is just the move, but... yeah, the position is just starting to look really sad. Nonetheless, I do believe that the focus of your position here should be to try to figure out how to solve the problem of the bishop on c8 and not so much on attacking. And in this position, f5, I guess, well, seems like something I would have played in the position as well, because the position looks really, really hard to meet. And after I play 93, the interesting move that I decided to play is because my plan is just simply to break. I just cannot wait anymore, and I notice that I cannot simply move my knight to d6, because if I do so, where am I heading? Do I want to trade my knight for the bishop on c8? Of course I don't want to do that. Do I want to move my knight to b7, to b5? Where do I go with a knight on d6, right? I don't want to move my knight to d6 because it's doing nothing. It's what we call a really beautiful piece on the board, but it's doing nothing, right? So in this position, what I want to do, and this is something which is basically a principle of chess, is that when you have space, when you have development, you want to generate tactics, right? So the way for me to generate tactics here is to try to open the position. Because if you get to close the position, for example, the best situation for you in this position would be to play d5 and go unpunished for that. Like, for example, if you can play d5 without having to pay for it with %, then your position is just right. For example, let's say a3, d5, h3, and here you're not dying, you know? Like, in this position, you're not dying anymore. Because I do not have a way to exploit your position. So I cannot allow you to do that. I cannot allow you to simply close the position to finish your development somehow, to try to figure out what to do. I cannot just give you time on the position. I have to try to figure out a way to exploit it. And the way I thought was the most logical one was simply to try to break the center, so that now I have some attacks on your queen, I have some attacks on your king. For example, I was thinking that this was probably really dangerous as well, with my knight coming to f7 with checks. Also, I thought that maybe this bishop will have a really nice diagonal to take advantage of the situation, and I thought that the queen on b6, for example, was not gonna do anything, because even if you take the pawn on b2, remember that there are certain positions in the open Sicilians when there are poisoned pawns, right? If you take the pawn on b2, what you're doing is that you're giving tempo to the other guy, and then you die, right? So that's something dangerous, right? So in this position, I just see knight e3, and I think that the other move that's liberating your position is knight d5. And you said that. You said that if you could put a knight on d5, I wouldn't have a pawn to basically push it away, right? And now if I move my knight to e3, if you move your knight to d5, I can take, you take, and now I have transformed the advantage that I had, which was basically on space and on tempi, and now I have something tangible to go for, which is a ability on d5. So I can move my knight to g5, and then the pawn on d5 is falling. And if that happens, then you also have an isolated pawn on d7. So these are kind of the things that I am thinking right now in this position. So that's why I play knight e3. And queen b6, alright, you're kind of taking on b2, and you're kind of getting away from the edge race, but I don't know, I just wanted to play d5. It's the move that I felt I needed to play. Like, I thought that what's the most annoying move in this position that I could ever imagine for the black pieces, and I thought that if d5 came in this position and I am playing with the black pieces, it will be terribly annoying. So I played d5, and here you said that knight b4 and knight d8 were the options. Maybe pawn takes is the other option. I think that the move probably is knight b4, just because knight d8 seems so sad. I thought that with knight b4 at least you're coming to d5, but with knight d8 it seems so sad.
I think I was thinking about this. This takes...
I didn't think queen b3 actually. I wasn't so sure about what to play against knight d4, my knight b4 in this position, because I had to figure the way here. No, but I don't think queen b3, right? I think d6 maybe, if anything. Yeah, this queen b3 is not, it's probably not the best way to proceed. For example here, wait a second, maybe after knight d4, right? Yeah. Here in this position I guess d6 is a way, because, wow, this is just too much. I mean, if I cannot convert this into some tangible advantage soon, I don't know, what can I do here in this position? Because, I mean, d6, knight c6, I guess, and probably just simply a3, and then knight e5, knight takes, pawn takes, queen takes, king h8, and this is just too strong. This is what we call in Spanish un peón clavo, which means something like a nail pawn, you know? And this is just too strong. Pawn. Exactly, this is just too strong. It's just something that stops you from developing, something that stops you from basically getting your pieces out, and also takes away your mobility.
This is too strong. This is the center of dreams. So
yeah, it's just too much.
Too strong.
Exactly.
Yeah, too much. But at this point, the game was already lost.
Yeah, this is just paying the consequences. But knight d8, I think that even here in this position, if you are losing, try to go active and try to be a little bit more tricky, right? Like maybe the move which seems a little bit more tricky than knight d8, which is just slowly waiting for death to come, is knight b4 and wait for that to come with the, I don't know, with open arms. And king f7, oh my god, I thought about that move and it was so horrible. Like when you said I want to play king f7, I was about to just like say something to you. Like you cannot play king f7. Like,
well, okay, I understand what you're saying, but everything loses. This is totally lost position.
Yeah, but king f7, no. That's a don't. And the reason why king f7 is a move that I wouldn't even consider in the position is because your king this is still the opening, the middle game. We're like in the transition between them, and generally you do not want your king to be on the center when there are chances of the center getting open, you know? Like here, when you move your king towards the center, what's happening is that you're basically saying, all right, I'm gonna bring my king into a position where all the pieces are gonna come when this gets open.
Yes.
Like, no, you can do that in the end game, that's possible, but in the opening and in the middle game, that's suicidal. And I thought, no, when you said king f7, I was like, what? That's so weird. And like king f7 is just something that I was so confused. I'm like, no. And also, of course, there are forks, right? With knight c4 and knight d6. And see how the knight before was on c4 and was doing not that much after a while. But when it went to e3, it didn't go to d6 because it was doing nothing there, right? But now that you're coming to f7, now I have something to do on d6. I have something to attack.
Yes.
And this is just too strong, right? This is the king is overloaded, I guess. I don't know. It's a weird phrase. I think I haven't heard that before. Like the king is overworked.
I was considering this move as the best move on the board just because it.
Like I want to suicide here.
Suicide. Yes.
I want to go kamikaze here.
Yeah, that was too much.
Yeah.
I resigned here.
Yeah, but this was a really interesting game nonetheless. I think this king f7 was the weirdest move of all. I was going to tell you. I even wrote that king f7 like in capitals because I thought, whoa, that's kind of too much. You cannot do that. And here, of course, this was just a game. It might wind up in some other position if we played another one, but nonetheless I think this was a really instructive one, and some things to remember out of this game for you would be something like, do not play the opening so fast, try to take a little bit of time to get into the position and to generate plans. Do not just develop because, try to develop with a plan, right? Try to see the plan before you develop so that your pieces all work out. Because something that I noticed is that I used to do that a lot. Like, and even now I do that sometimes. And it's that I just develop because, right? And when I do that, I notice that my pieces do not work as a team, you know? Mostly my pieces just are out, but they are not working as a team. They are not just following a major, how to call it, objective, right? They're just out, but not doing that much. So we have to try to see the objective before we develop, so that when we develop, our pieces just work together as a team. That's really nice. And finally, I do believe that king f7, no, that's a don't, right? That's terribly a don't. Remember that generally we want to centralize our king, and we want to do that when we are heading the end game, right? And when the king actually works to fight for activity, and where the king starts to have a value of 3 points according to some outers and stuff. So that it's interesting also to see how if you have a passive king during the end game, you're basically 3 points below the other guy. It's kind of silly, but that's probably how it works. So I think this was a really interesting game, Matthew. If you're around, you can always send me a message and we can just try some other game. It might be fun. Also, if you like this and if you think it was useful, just try to spread the word. Maybe leave a comment somewhere, maybe subscribe to the YouTube channel, share this with your friends and stuff, so that some other people can get benefits out of it. And also, even myself, I've noticed that teaching chess is something that teach you a lot of chess, like it's really interesting. And that's basically what it is, right? Of course, if you didn't like it and you hate me because that knight d6 was really strong, you can always say, I hate this guy. And that's something possible, right? I don't know, this guy doesn't know about chess, I hate him, he doesn't know what he's talking about. That's something possible.
Well, I like your comments about the opening pawn structure. I learned a lot. You were talking about playing e4, and like when we were talking about this, especially Ray, when you talked about this move, that's a poor move. Then you also talked about this move. These two moves I made in a row were very poor. I need to go back and look.
Exactly.
Instead of these two moves, what I needed to do is to play this, even this, probably a pawn move.
Exactly.
And something active like this.
Exactly. And that's something interesting as well, because when we're playing a little bit of hyper-modernism and stuff, we notice that generally if we do not do anything about the center for a long period of time, we can get crushed,
right.
And that's something that I see a lot when I play, for example, 1b6 with the Owen defense. That's something that I like to play for blitz and sometimes even for serious games when I want to surprise people. And it's not so good, but it kind of have given me results. I've noticed that when I do not go for the center, like in a long period of time, what's happening is that I just get crushed, Like
right.
Literally, people just come and kill me, and I go like no. And this kind of positions where I have to move my bishop here, and they come with e5 and all of these things, and I just die. It's too much. But it's something interesting to see that we have to try to fight for the center as well, and the plan that's quite important. So Matthew, I think this was a lot of fun, and you can always hit me a message, and you can just pretty much say whatever you want.
Maybe tomorrow we could do another one.
Oh, might be fun as well.
I'll study this.
Perfect.
What time zone are you in? Where do you live?
I live in Venezuela, which has the same time. Oh my God, I forgot the word. Time. How do you call it? Time.
A time zone.
Time zone. Yeah,
time zone.
A time zone that Texas has in the United States, because I have a couple of students there, and we pretty much have the same time, which I believe is East time zone or something like that. It's basically, I'll send it to you in a second. And I'll probably be around I don't know, maybe 3 p.m. of that time. And I'll send you the details in a second when I just see my schedule for tomorrow. But I think it might be fun, and we could learn a couple of things more. So that's pretty much what it is. I'll send you a couple of messages here on Skype. And that's what it is. Keep it fun. I'll see you around, right? Don't forget to share the word. Thank you too.
Yep,
that was pretty fun.
Thanks. Bye.